Hello, so today is going to be a VOD review of HWEI Reroll, HWEI Mordekaiser actually. So I've always been a fan of HWEI Reroll. I've always been a fan of Mordekaiser Reroll. I always thought these units were broken. This is something that's like always been good in the stats. Some people try and make it like whenever there's like a lot of 3-cost rerolls or like that type of meta. A really good option that you can always like go that's pretty uncontested is playing towards HWEI and Blaster's reroll or like the Vanguard Frost variation. There's a couple different versions of this board that you can play, and this is one that I just kind of look at it and I'm like, you know what, I start the game out with a Mordekaiser, I'm just gonna play HWEI Ezreal or HWEI Zillion, like that version. Either or is fine. So here it's just like you start out with some 3 costs. It's starting out with a completed item. Excuse me. So we'll see what we get. Judging by my items, I start with a tier. Obviously, it's not a HWEI spot right now. It might become a little bit more like that later. But I'll kind of explain my thought process, and then we'll also go over the board. If you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe. But basically, we're going to go over this game. And I'm also going to show you like how to build the board and all of that stuff. One thing to note, if you don't like HWEI as a carry, I don't care. You know, if you're going to... The last time I made a video a while ago where I got a first playing HWEI. And I said, hey, check out this Vanguard HWEI combo. This was a couple weeks ago. And I got probably the most amount of hateful comments on that video of any other video I produced on this channel. So since then, I just never post any videos about HWEI. But I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe I've filtered out everybody. I banned everybody that I don't like. So maybe now we can actually go back to like talking like adults and like saying like what comps are good and what comps are bad and stuff like that. So... you know, if you're one of those people and you think that HWEI sucks and you played it and you got a bot 4 and you don't like me because I'm going to say that HWEI was pretty good here, by all means, just, you know, get the comments out now so that I can ban you, you know? Don't care anymore. But if you want to learn, stay by. This is going to be a learning to spell game. So learning to spell is just very, very strong. I'm starting with a Mordekaiser. So I just want to play some variation of a board that plays around this Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser recently got buffed and Vanguards got buffed as a whole. So Mordekaiser is just very strong. I look around. Learning to spell is just very good in general. You'll see that it does really well in the stats. And that's usually because of mages. As well as some other 1-cost rerolls where like you have 1-cost version of the unit. Basically the way it works is that every time you get a takedown, every time you get 2 takedowns, the unit gains 1 AP. And it's like a permanent buff for that unit. So, for example, because I'm starting with Mordekaiser here and I have a Zillion, I'm just going to play towards the HWEI Zillion line. I want to pick an item for Mordekaiser. I get Crown Guard. Crown Guard's very good on Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser scales really well off his AP. Basically, all he scales off of his AP. So he's going to get a really insane shield from Vanguard. And he's also going to gain a shield every time he does his cast. And Mordekaiser can do a lot of damage as well. He has a little bit of a damage amp effect. So Mordekaiser just lives forever, as well as does a bunch of damage. So right now, I'm just setting up my game to scale up this Mordekaiser, because that's what I think to myself. Okay, I'll just do learning to spell. I'll play some variation of a board that plays around Mordekaiser. Now, the versions of the boards that I know, or these are the ones that I like to play. I don't think one of them is any much stronger than the others. We'll just go learning to spell in general, and you can see here. So learning to spell, it averages very, very well. And as you can see, it's usually for mages. You're usually just playing mage reroll with it. But there is also, you can also play HWEI. It's obviously worse. Right? It's obviously going to be worse. You're going to look at the stats. It's going to be plus delta. It's going to be worse. That's fine. It just depends if your spot is good enough for it. Of course, I'm not saying that you just take it and you just blindly play mages, because there was already 2 people in the lobby that looked like they were angling towards mages based on my own interpretation of things. But you could just play around Mordekaiser. It's still going to be a sub 4 game. It's still going to be around that area. So you can definitely like play around those units instead. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt, but learning to spell is just generally pretty good if you start with a unit that can make use of the learning to spell. So the boards that I usually play when if I'm going for like an uncontested line, there's basically 2 boards. I'll start with the one that we're not going to play this game. So this is the 4 Vanguard, 4 Blaster variation. So basically what you do, excuse me, this is a level 7 reroll board where you're trying to go for Mordekaiser 3, Ezreal 3, and HWEI 3. HWEI items are always blue buff Nashers. That's like the best set of items that you can get. And the third item is pretty flexible. If you don't have anti-heal, then you can make a Morello on HWEI. But a lot of times, or a red buff also works. HWEI is just really slow in that the time it takes for HWEI to cast. So attack speed items are really good. That's why you just want blue buff Nashers. You just want to make him cast as many times as possible, because every third cast, HWEI is going to do like the Giga hit where he hits 2 extra bolts and he like targets the lowest percentage allies. But in general, if you can make like triple AP, it also works out really well. So for example, Rabadons would be really nice on HWEI, or even a JG would be really nice on HWEI. With Mordekaiser, it's usually like AP tank items are really good, but you can also put like general items on him. So I like to always make sure that I have Crown Guard and Spark. Spark just to have Shred, because the Mordekaiser is going to do a bunch of damage, and he's going to also work as a tank. So it's really nice to have the Spark on the Mordekaiser. And then you also want Crown Guard, because Crown Guard is just going to synergize really well with giving him the health shield that he needs to survive, as well as giving him that ability power. Another option as well is like stuff like Adaptive Helm's really good on Mordekaiser, or because he's a Vanguard, you can also just have general tank items. Things like Protector's Vow or Gargoyle Stoneplate also work really well. He's not like a Bastion where he gains a bunch of armor, so it's not going to be that much of diminishing returns. It actually works out really well on him. And then Ezreal, you can usually put different types of sword components or glove components. Basically your leftover components a lot of times just end up on the Ezreal. With this comp, it's very hard to deal with a sword, so that's why I like this variation where you're playing around Ezreal or Varus. If you had a Varus 2, you can even itemize the Varus, and then you can level. This is only level 7, so if you're able to push levels, you can level for Arcana, and then eventually level for 6 Blaster. Both of them are really good ways of capping out your board. But whenever I'm thinking about this variation, I like this one a lot, because if you get swords and if you get gloves, which otherwise would be hard to make certain components, right? If you get a sword, you pretty much are forced to not make blue buff and you have to make Shojin, because you can't really make a Mordekaiser item a lot of time with sword. This variation lets you high roll that aspect a lot more easily. You can't really miss on your items, because if you get really aggressive AD items, you put them on Ezreal. If you get really aggressive like AP items, you put them on HWEI. And if you get tank items, you put them on Mordekaiser. So no matter what items you get dropped, you're in a good spot. This variation, I'm not sure which one caps higher, but the other variation that you can play, this is the one that we're actually going to play in this game, because I started out with a Zilean. But basically what you can do is you can play 3 Frost with the 4 Vanguard frontline, and then you just fit in Preserver as well. So this variation, you can also go for Bard 3 and Zilean 3, depending on your spot. But typically you're going for HWEI 3, Mordekaiser 3. Bard scales up because of Sugarcraft as well, so you can itemize Bard as a secondary carry, or you can even itemize Zilean as a secondary carry. And instead of having 4 Blaster, you're putting in 3 Frost. I'm not sure which of the two is stronger. This one, it's more AP reliant. So this is a lot better for learning to spell, because your Zilean, your Bard, I think get a little bit more value than you would have with like an Ezreal or a Varus, especially since you can start the game with a Zilean like I am to scale it up, and start the game with a Warwick to scale him up. So some of those aspects work out a lot better, especially with learning to spell. The only thing is that if you get a lot of AD items, you run into a spot where you might not be able to slam everything very easily. So just be careful. But this is the other variation, and then to cap out your board, you can level for Arcana, you can level for Chrono, or you can level for Eldritch or Scholar in some cases. All of those are fine. So we'll see how it plays out. We're going to go back to the game. So this game was a little bit high roll, of course. Any game that works out for you, it's going to be a little bit high roll. So I actually took Mordekaiser on Carousel here. I'm going to go back just a little bit just to show you. So on Carousel, my tier got taken and I wasn't first pick, so I decided to just take Mordekaiser pair. If you don't have a component that you necessarily need to take, taking a pair of a 3-cost unit is really good, because then you allow yourself to high roll into hitting the 2-star variation, then you're super stable in your mid game. So on Krugs, I'm Mordekaiser 2 now. I'm in a really good spot. All I need to do is I need to find a HWEI. A lot of times when you're taking Learning to Spell, you shouldn't really play towards this line unless you start with a HWEI already, because then the HWEI would be scaling with the Learning to Spell. Right now I'm just scaling my Mordekaiser. Obviously that's going to be fine. Mordekaiser is very strong, but you just have to be careful and cautious about these things. So as you can see, I'm just going to see what items. I got another Mordekaiser anyway, so that's great. We're kind of high rolling on the Mordekaisers. And now we're just going to like coast through the game and play it like a normal 3-cost reroll. So we're going to try and get ourselves to level 7, establish as many econ thresholds as possible. You'll notice that I am quite broke. Like I'm only 40 gold on Krugs here. Usually you want to be closer to 50 gold, especially if you're losing a bunch of rounds. The reason I'm so broke is because Mordekaiser is expensive, and I held on to 2 copies of Mordekaiser. So instead of making econ intervals, because I'm playing towards this reroll, I'm holding on to the Mordekaiser. So I'm sacrificing the econ in order to play around these. Now, Because I'm already committed towards this Zillion line, kind of, that Zillion's learning to spell. I don't think I can really itemize Ezreal as well. It doesn't seem like I have a lot of items. So I don't want to play towards Ezreal HWEI variation because I'm also broke. The variation that I was talking about with when you go for Ezreal 3, HWEI 3, Mordekaiser 3, you need to hit 3-star 3 costs. So it takes a lot of gold. So if your econ isn't in a good spot, you have to avoid that particular variation. This variation, I only need to hit HWEI 3 and Mordekaiser 3. And because I'm already not super rich, I want to play towards this line. Now, I got dropped 2 swords. So one sword, you can use a Bloodthirster on Mordekaiser. It's fine. Just give him some healing, whatever. He sustains himself and he can live a little bit longer. It's a frontline item, whatever. It's like pretty much the only sword frontline item you can make, besides Sterix. But, you know, that I didn't have a Sterix. And then the other item you can make is Shojin. So now I'm making Shojin for the eventual HWEI that I get. Now I get my items. My items aren't the greatest, so What the Forge might be a gambit to take, but I don't, because I already committed so much gold to holding onto these Mordekaisers. I can't really pivot if I get like some kind of other What the Forge type of items. It's just gonna be really hard to play around. I would rather just take Giant and Mighty here. Just really strong combat augment, especially with a comp like this where you have these Mordekaisers that you need to like scale up. If I hit Mordekaiser 3, it's just gonna work out really well. It's gonna get a bunch of extra max HP. It's going to work out to make him like a giga tank, especially with his shielding. I found a HWEI, by the way. You know, we have the HWEI, so this is perfect for us. So this is basically what majority of the board is going to look like, and I'm just going to level to play the Preservers and the extra Vanguard on level 7. I'm not pushing levels to 6 right now because I am pretty broke. Obviously, like I said before, I sacrificed econ in order to hold on to these Mordekaisers, and that's what put me in this spot. My board value is very expensive. Whenever you think about TFT, you should always think about 3 things. You have to think about your econ, you have to think about your board value, and you have to think about your HP. All of these are resources. Right now, my board value is very high. I have 9 gold invested in this Mordekaiser, another 3 gold invested in this HWEI, so it's expected that my board is going to be really strong, and hopefully that translates to me not taking too bad of a loss or too bad of losses throughout this stage 3 until I hit like HWEI 2 full board, full stabilization. But now that we have HWEI can scale up learning to spell. Most of the units on my board are the units that are going to stay in for majority of the game. The Zillion, the Mordekaiser, and the Warwick, for example. But ideally, what we want to do is we want to get to a point where we have all of the units that we desire on our board. Because, you know, you can't guarantee that Mordekaiser is going to get the kill. You can't guarantee that HWEI is going to get the kill. But ideally, you want to put yourself in a spot where your whole board is what's going to stay on your board for as much as possible. Because then you're not wasting any learning to spell value. Right? So for example, if this Blitzcrank just happens to kill Steal one round or does something where he gets the kill instead of the Mordekaiser, the HWEI, the Zillion, or the Warwick, then you run into a spot where it's like, okay, well that's a wasted learning to spell value that I could be scaling the actual units that I want. I'm just waiting on my items though. Ideally I can make a Spark, that's what I'm saving the Cloak for, and then the Glove I can make, you know, there's a lot of different glove items you can make. Guard Breaker, even frontline items like Steadfast might be fine. You can also make a JG, like a Jewel Gauntlet for this HWEI as well. All of them are fine. So here, ideally, I get Rod. That's what I would want the most. There's also a HWEI with a glove. If I don't get the Rod, I'm down to just take the HWEI because it's just high value for me. Okay, so I don't get the Rod. None of these components are particularly great. I could take the the belt. The belt is the best to make an item, but in this case, I just say to myself, I have a Zillion that might be scaling. I might have a Bard that scales later. In the worst case scenario, with 2 gloves, I could just make a TG, like I can just make a Thieves Gloves, and itemize one of the other units. That's my thought process at least. Here, now I get the Bard in, that's good. We're almost at our completed board for Learning to Spell, which is very good for us. Once we're at our completed Learning to Spell board, then we're basically just going to slow roll on level 7 and make sure that we keep our board as strong as possible. Like I said, it's a very chill opening whenever you're playing these 3-cost rerolls. We did have the Zillion really early, we had the Mordekaiser really early. So it's hard to show it because obviously this is a VOD review, so it's like as many times as I click my Mordekaiser is when we'll be able to see how much AP the Mordekaiser has. But this Mordekaiser has been scaling AP for much of the game, so once we hit Mordekaiser 3, he will be insanely strong. And that's the only reason that this works like this. I wouldn't recommend playing this way if you don't have starting with HWEI, Ezreal, HWEI, Mordekaiser, and really good items, for example. This HWEI reroll is not something that you just say, I'm going to hard force HWEI reroll, start of the game. The only reason I'm forcing towards is because mages were really contested. I decided to take learning to spell, and I'm playing around this Mordekaiser who is scaling. That is a very important thing to note. I'm playing around the Mordekaiser that is scaling. The Mordekaiser is going to do as much damage as the HWEI, if not more damage than the HWEI, for most of this game. I want that to be very clear, right? It's just the way it is. Mordekaiser does a lot of damage. Mordekaiser is very tanky and does a lot of damage. That's his thing. It's been like that since day one of the set. He has been really strong. Borderline broken. One of the best units in the game. By far. I've been saying it forever. I believe it. If you don't believe it, that's fine. I don't care if you don't believe it. I believe it, and that's what I'm saying, okay? So that's the way I'm playing around this game. Of course, if you don't have learning to spell and you don't start with like this type of opener where you have like an early copy of Mordekaiser that can scale up, then you want to make sure that your spot is really good for the comp. You want to make sure that you have like, you know, 1 or 2 HWEI items. You're starting with a HWEI. The same way that when you think about mages. Mages are a little bit broken, but like a lot of times, if you don't start with like a Viger Vex or like a really good mage opener, like if you don't have tears and rods and mage items, you really don't want to play around mages, because then, like, you know, you might never hit the Viger Vex, and then it's often contested. So then if you're contested and you don't have good items, you just go 8th instantly. That happens a lot. So that's what I'm trying to explain. I'm not saying, hey, just like boot up the game tomorrow and hard force this comp. It's broken, free LP. We're not that type of channel. I usually say like, hey, I'm trying this, or I'm playing this either for learning experience or because I have a specific spot for it. And that's usually how I pick the comps that I play. Looking around, there was a mage player. When there's another 3-cost reroller, they're going to thin out the pool and they're going to help you hit. That's a really big benefit that you get a lot of the time. So you always want to be careful. You always want to be prepared for that. And you always want to be careful of that. Committing to a reroll is really bad if nobody else is rerolling. But if lots of people are rerolling, then it makes it really easy for all of you to hit. So here, I just put in 4 Vanguard. Once I find a Tahm Kench, I'm going to put the Tahm Kench. I'm going to roll a little bit here. I pre-leveled to 7. 4-1 is when you want to spike. As you can see, my HP I used as a resource. I kind of sacked to make sure my econ was re-established by now. And as you can see, I'm level 7, 50 gold. I re-established my econ. I built it back up over stage 3 by being very careful and making sure I made all my econ intervals. And now, because I have Mordekaiser 2, HWEI 2, I should be good to go. Like, I should be okay. I have Spark, which is really good. So against, like, now I have magic resist, like, what's it called? I have sun shredding for magic resist, so I'll do more damage. As you can see, this Mordekaiser, we'll look at the damage report. This Mordekaiser is probably going to do almost as much damage as the HWEI with 3 items. It's totally good. Our HWEI scaling, our Mordekaiser scaling. The longer this game goes on, the better we'll be off. Because HWEI takes a lot of time, I think Bloss, I don't know which one is better here, actually. I'm actually not sure, and there's not enough stats for me to tell you with a without reasonable, like, you know, beyond a reasonable doubt. I take a movable object here. The reason I took a movable object is because this comp requires the HWEI to cast a bunch. So HWEI takes time to cast. Excuse me. So HWEI takes time to cast, so you want to make sure that your board is very tanky. Giving my whole board a bunch of armor, especially looking at my Mordekaiser items, right? It's not like my Mordekaiser has gargoyles. My Mordekaiser doesn't have a bunch of armor and magic resist. My Mordekaiser has a Bloodthirster, which is like a giga strong tank item, a Spark, which is a utility item. Sorry, a Bloodthirster was like a giga attacking item, a Spark, and a Crown Guard, which just works to give him more AP. What he's missing is armor and magic resist. So this Randuin's that I just got, this Prismatic Randuin's, just completely ties my board together. Of course, I have crit gloves, and I could play towards like the Blossoming Lotus. You know, if my board lives long enough, then I'll just have like an insane crit chance, and I'll just like delete the backline in one cast with the HWEI. That is also a viable option, but in my head, the way that I see it is that the more consistent, reliable way to do this is just give my whole team a bunch of armor. And I give my whole team a bunch of armor and they can't kill the Mordekaiser, I don't care. Like, I'm not trying to make the HWEI 1-tap the backline, but I'm okay if the HWEI 2-taps the backline. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Hopefully it makes some sense. I'm not sure which one's the better one, There's not enough information. I'll double check the stats now just in case it changed from the time I was playing this game to the time I'm actually here. I'll just do like Mordekaiser 3, HWEI 3, Augments, Prismatic. Yeah, Blossoming Lotus is better, by the way. I'm pretty sure. It's one of the better ones. This is what I remember. So Randuin's Omen isn't on the list, but Blossoming Lotus is, and it's very low. So here, I'll show you the stats just so that we're very transparent. That's what I was saying. I know Blossoming Lotus is strong. I'm just saying I think Randuin's a bit better, and I don't see Randuin's on the list. I remember, that's what I remember. There was just no stats for it. So I put HWEI 3, Mordekaiser 3 here. And as you can see, like, items for HWEI is really good. What the Forge is really broken, but you have to kind of high roll into it. Egg is really good because if you get the cash out, you win. That's the only reason. But these are all very small sample size, right? So for me at least, and then March of Progress, that's just for like rolling. Blaster Crown is if you're playing like 6 blaster variation, and these are just like your high cap board. That's like the other board I showed you. But as you can see, it does average really high if you actually hit the Mordekaiser 3 and the HWEI 3. And then I think in terms of traits, you'll see that like 4 blaster is not that good, 6 blaster is like giga good, and then 2 blaster is a little bit better. That's what I was saying, like the 2 variations. This one I think caps higher if you play like the Frost variation, right, rather than the 4 blaster 4 Vanguard variation. But you know, small sample sizes, hard to tell. I played this comp before the current patch, so I played in the previous patches where there was more statistics on it. And when there was more statistics, I think the HWEI Preserver version, which is the one that I'm playing right now, usually capped higher. I'm holding on to this Milio, by the way, because maybe Milio just like, maybe I can just play Milio as my +1. Milio just gives a bunch of items. Usually this comp is very item hungry because you have a lot of units that are scaling up. So that can work out, but we're pretty stable now. We don't have to roll aggressively. Because we have HWEI 2, Mordekaiser 2. We should win most fights. Like, for example, this guy is very fucking strong because he has a Seraphine 3 with a Radiant item. So there's a chance that our HWEI just gets deleted by the Seraphine and then we lose the fight, which I think is what's happening. Yeah, we lost the fight. The Seraphine has Radiant Hodge. I think I win this fight in most cases, but because this Seraphine has Radiant Hodge, I think that's the reason I lost, because the Seraphine was able to heal up enough to live, which is so funny to me, but also really unfortunate. But anyways, when we're playing this, you have to understand, being stable is very, very good here. The more stable that we are, the greater the chances of a win out. We might literally go first this game. I know what I went because I played the game, obviously, but you know, for sake of keeping it like interesting and fun for you YouTube audience, I won't say exactly what my placement is. But you have to understand, the longer the game goes on, the more learning to spell value I get. Right now, my entire board is going to stay on my board permanently. So learning to spell is getting all its value, every single unit that I kill. As people level up, there's also more units that are going to be available. This guy also is so fucking annoying because like, I'll talk about it after, but if you look at this guy's board, he's learning to spell, so similar to me. This guy's the scariest in the lobby because he's super stable, and then he took Call to Chaos, and look at the high roll. He took Call to Chaos. His Cassio items are ass. Like, he doesn't have a Guinsoo on Cassio, but he hits double fucking, what's it called, the double Zeeks on his Prismatic. He literally RNG'd into like one of the best things he could have hit for his spot. Which, you know, of course, you know, alright, you know, I high rolled the Mordekaiser, so like, you know, I can't really complain. But it's like, bro, like that guy, I would have beat his ass every day of the week. But now it's like I might go second because he's also learning to spell. So his Cassio, as soon as he gets a Guinsoo on that thing, is gonna delete my board. Like, and then he has the scaling Swain for most of the game. So it's just very unfortunate. It's like, bro, it's like, come on. Like he just hit the best thing he could have for free. I'm like, what are we doing here? But anyway, it's fine. Well, we're still gonna play our game. We're pretty stable. We can start to roll now. We have really good econ. We just want to hit HWEI 3, Mordekaiser 3. We have what's it called? We started the game out with a lot of Mordekaisers, so we're actually in a good spot to hit. We only need 2 Mordekaisers. I'm going to roll until around 50, and then if I'm one off Mordekaiser, I'm going to set it beyond 50. That's basically the idea. Oh, maybe I'm rolling a little bit deeper. Ugh, this is kind of scary. Oh, I'm just sending it. Yeah, I'm like 2 off. Oh, I sent it pretty deep this turn. I wonder why. Oh, that's right. This guy, this portal guy. I guess it is my HP is pretty low. But I'm 1 off HWEI, 1 off Mordekaiser. I did send it pretty deep. I think I wanted to send it to 30. I would have greeted 1 more turn. In hindsight, maybe that's a bit crazy. But if I was playing for first tier, I don't think I had like a lot of LP to play with. So if I wanted to go for a first tier, I think it would have been correct to wait 1 more turn before sending it. Like I just rolled to 50 and then 5-2 I send it to 30. You know, just to give myself a little bit of extra econ. But now I'm 1 off of both of them. I'm just going straight to 0. So I guess it doesn't really matter. It's not that big of a difference here. So HWEI 3, we're still going to roll. We're 1 off Mordekaiser. It's a huge spike. Yeah, we just roll till Mordekaiser 3. I could also go for Zillion 3, but I don't think that's a good idea. And then I made Morello. If you notice, if you peek my HWEI items, I made Morello. I just want to make anti-heal. There's a lot of boards that have a lot of healing. Especially like if you think about like the Swain, for example, boards like that. You want to make sure that you have anti-heal. This guy's shapeshifters, right? If they have like anything like a declaw, it just makes them completely unbearably strong. But now we hit Mordekaiser 3. This is where we reap the rewards of all of our scaling that we've been talking about. Now that we have Mordekaiser 3, he's going to do a shit ton of damage. He's going to be super tanky. And our HWEI as well is going to do a shit ton of damage and be super tanky. As you can see here, look at this Mordekaiser. He gets to around half health, he pops a shield, and then he just lives forever. That guy had a smolder. That guy had a smolder. And it's not even close. He just killed like 1 or 2 little shitters. Right? But this is what we were trying to go for. Obviously, if we hit better items, we have a Reforger. We can swap out the HWEI items and always itemize either the Zillion or the Bard with the leftover items. So ideally, we can fix up our HWEI items. If we can't fix up our HWEI items, these aren't the best HWEI items, but we can't greed our items too much because we're learning to spell. We needed to make sure that we put as many good items on HWEI early as possible to make sure that he actually gets some kills or does some damage to scale up a little bit. Here I'm just trying to adjust my positioning a little bit. I don't want Mordekaiser to just get accidentally deleted by some of these comps. So I'm trying to like make the Rumble maybe take some of the early game aggro and then have the Mordekaiser kind of at least get 1 or 2 shields off so that he's like super tanky. Because like, you know, when Mordekaiser casts, that's when he becomes very monstrous. So you can see here, this guy's playing like a Vanguard Varus variation with a Smolder. I don't think he has a chance of beating me because, like I said, this Mordekaiser is going to be impossible to kill. He's been scaling the whole game. Even without learning to spell, Mordekaiser is impossible to kill. Imagine if Mordekaiser just had like an extra 50 AP. Like, hello? Like, it's fine. Like, we're going to win. So here, this is where I look at the board. I could get like a Titans for Mordekaiser. I could swap out the Bloodthirster. I don't think the Bloodthirster is that important, but I'm down to just like leave it. In terms of other items, there's nothing I really need here in terms of utility. Nashers is very good on HWEI. HWEI is really slow with his casting. I could swap out one of these items for Nashers, and that will up my damage by a lot. It actually helps out a lot to give attack speed to this HWEI. Especially being Blaster, so after his first cast, his auto attacks, everything, he just has damage amp, right? So it works out really well. Here I'm just rolling for a charm, by the way. I'm rolling every turn for a charm because I'm trying to maximize my placements. Right now, I am 20 HP. I can't really consider myself, oh, I'm going to go 9. I'm going to go 10. I'm going to do, like, you know, don't get those into your head. Make sure that you secure your placements as early as possible. And then if you high roll, you can get first. Like, this was the first example of a little bit of a high roll. Not the first, but another example of a little high roll here. Getting Nashor's Tooth on HWEI, I've now put one I swapped out one kind of mid item, just like a utility item, for like a very, very strong HWEI item. So it works out really well. Now my HWEI is just going to start to do more damage. And that helps out a lot with the learning to spell and all of the scaling that we're doing. Of course, as you can see, this guy, not a chance in hell of beating me, just doesn't have enough single target damage. With the Rise and this whole portal board, I don't even think he killed a single unit. Like, straight up. Like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's like everybody's on the fucking board. He didn't kill one thing. Right? That's what happens with Vanguards a lot. They buff 4 Vanguards. Even the shitters, sometimes if they don't get aggroed right away, they pop their shield, and then as long as you're deleting their units, you're fine a lot of the time. This is the one guy I'm scared of. He has a Guinsu on the Cassiopeia now, so that's really scary. So we'll see how it works out. I'm trying to reposition here. I want to be on opposite side of the Radiant Archangels. There's a guy with Radiant Archangels. The Radiant Archangels Rise. So I don't want my HWEI to get sniped randomly by the Radiant Archangels Rise that's on the same side as me. So I'm swapping over to the opposite side. This is bad positioning for this guy though. Now this guy, I think I would have lost anyways. I think he beats me always. It's just really hard to get to this Cassiopeia in time, because this Swain is just so fucking tanky. The same way my Mordekaiser has been scaling the whole game, this Swain has been scaling the whole game, and he has a Radiant fucking Gargoyle. Holy shit. And then my HWEI didn't cast on the fucking Cassio as well, so I just got Giga fucking trolled. Which is fine, it's totally fine, it is what it is. We lose this fight. Like I said before, that's why we were rolling for charms. We're trying to make sure that we get our top 4 here. And then if we high roll some items, then we can play for first. Because obviously we can swap out this Shojin for blue buff on HWEI. We can also get more tank items. Fix the items on the Mordekaiser, for example. As you can see, I'm just removing the Bloodthirster just in case I get, like, you know, I think a Gargoyle would give more value than the Bloodthirster. Maybe like some other, like what's called Adaptive Helm, for example, might be really good. So we use a remover. I'm going to get a new remover because that's the way that the game works now. Every time on neutrals, if you don't have a remover on bench, you get a new one. And what do I peep here? Is that blue buff I see? Oh, gee golly, Whitaker. We're fucking high rolling. We are going to be really fucking strong now. If you've never seen HWEI with blue buff Nashers, he pumps out damage. So I just leveled to 8 here. It's a really easy level. I should have bought the Jax. Jax gives me Chrono, and Chrono gives me a little bit of passive healing, so that's a huge mistake right there. I hit the dragon though, and then I just play the Zillion. I don't think I even care about Zillion 3 at this point, because I think Bard does a better job with Morello than Zillion, because Zillion just hits like the one unit a lot of the time. So I think Bard is a little bit better. I didn't get to swap sides against this Radiant Archangel's Rise, but I do have Dragon, so I should be fine. But this was a little bit scary. This is an example of how you can throw a game. It's just like not positioning against a Rise player and just having your backline deleted. As you can see, if the Rise hit my HWEI earlier, my HWEI would have died. But, you know, it worked out. We're fine. It's a top 3 right now. Very narrowly, but still a top 3. Like, I really think that I should have held Jax for Chrono. I think that would have helped me out a lot. I think putting in an extra Preserver is fine here, right? So playing this Rakan is good. I honestly think that Nora and Yuumi might be the best option, which is on, like, it's in my shop. So I'm not exactly sure which one's better. I sell it because I was trying to buy a charm. That's why I sold the Nora. I think Nora is better than the Rakan here. I think the Nora, with the healing and the damage that it gives, I can put it on my Mordekaiser and it will help me out a lot because it will make my Mordekaiser like, literally unkillable. As opposed to like Preserver. I can also play Arcana on level 8, which is totally fine. This is the mage guy that I was kind of scared about. My HWEI lived. If you look at my HWEI's the dude that lived. He's like fucking 1 HP and he lived, so that was huge. But Mordekaiser clutches up anyways in those situations, so we just have enough damage now. With the blue buff Nashers, if we didn't have blue buff Nashers there, I'm pretty sure that's it and we go third. Because we were able to play our early game items really well, and now we got them fixed into like proper good ass HWEI items, we're in a good spot now. We're, like, to actually play for first. Because I don't think the other people will win against this board. It's also stage 6. Remember what I was saying with learning to spell? At one point, you just win for free because you just have so much AP. So now it's this guy that I'm worried about, right? This is the other learning to spell player who has a bunch of HP. So this guy's very scary. However, my HWEI items are now good enough that I might be able to kill off this Cassiopeia before I have to deal with the Swain. And that's a really big deal. This is against a clone, so take it with a grain of salt. We're going to see how we fare up against this guy when we fight his real. Because clones, usually they're a little bit weaker. But this is what usually happens, right? If the Mordekaiser lives long enough, the HWEI casts enough times to kill the backline units. And then you eventually delete some of the damage, and then you're in a good spot. I put an Arcana. Arcana gives me a little bit of extra HP or AP, but usually HP. I think I just take Protector's Vow here. Yeah. I have Tahm Kench too. It's 4 Vanguard Tahm Kench 2. Protector's Vow is very good on Tahm Kench because Protector's Vow gives you a lot of mana. So it allows the Tahm Kench to sometimes double cast in a game. So if the Tahm Kench can get 2 casts off, like the stun is really, really huge. Because like I said, this comp needs you to stall long enough for the way to get to those triple casts to do a bunch of damage. So here I'm rolling for a charm. So I want to make sure I have a charm. None of these charms are good combat charms, so I'm just rolling them just to see. I put in the Nora with the Yumi because I found a new copy of it. That's good enough, I guess. Just give me some extra HP, sure. So let's see. This is the other Learning to Spell player. So let's make sure that like we can't really position any differently. This just comes down to if my Mordekaiser can outlive this Cassio ramping up. But what we do have is we have a Tahm Kench that got a stun off, which is pretty good. It was just 1 stun, it wasn't 2 stuns, so we'll see how it goes. But this way, just deleting everybody. So as you can see, this is looking pretty good for me, no? Look, my Mordekaiser, like at one point, that's what I was saying. At one point, you have so much AP on Mordekaiser and HWEI that you literally just win. You literally just win all the time. Because the problem with HWEI is that he doesn't do enough damage, he's a little bit slow. Right? So like if you're playing 4 blasters, if you hit everybody 3-star that you can stall out long enough, then you're good. So if you have Mordekaiser 3, it makes such a big difference because this Mordekaiser is fucking unkillable. It is fucking broken. It is so fucking strong. Right? 4 Vanguard, Mordekaiser 3, nobody's killing that shit. It does not matter how much they ramp up. And then if you have something like that that's unkillable, it gives your HWEI enough time to get to those 3rd casts because, like, you know, he does a bunch of damage because first you have to cast and you activate Blaster, then you have to cast a 2nd time, then you have to cast a 3rd time, then the 3rd time you get like the backline hit, and then you go 1, 2, 3, and then the 2nd, 3rd time you get another thing. So you really have to cast 6 times, right? As soon as HWEI casts 6 times, then the round is fucking over. So that's what it means. You need to like live long enough. Here my HWEI got deleted, but Mordekaiser will clutch up. We're totally fine. Now I'm fighting this guy. This guy actually lost to the mage player. So guess what? It's just a first out of nowhere. We just got a first with HWEI, right? You know, it is what it is. Obviously, this was a little bit of a forcing game. I tried to make it entertaining. I tried to like explain my thought process along the way. So, you know, please, with a grain of salt, take this game and look at it and decide to yourself if you have a good spot for HWEI. The main thing you should always note is that Mordekaiser is really broken. Of course, if we weren't able to fix our HWEI items, if we weren't able to fix ourselves to get like blue buff Nashers +1 item, if we weren't able to fix those items, then there was a good chance that we ended up like 3rd or even 4th. That's just the way it is. This isn't a comp that usually goes first. You don't always go first with it. If you have a good spot for it, like if you start the game and you have blue buff and a HWEI, then yeah, you can play towards HWEI and you can play for first. But if you don't have those items and you have a bunch of swords like I did, you can try and tempo it like I did. You can tempo it and have things work out and you'll be pretty okay. But the main thing you have to understand is that things get really bad if you don't have perfect items on everybody. Of course, one other thing to note is the Cassio player. The Randuins work really well here because the Cassio player doesn't have, or I guess they do, they have Shiv. I was gonna say they don't have magic resist, or they don't have that much magic resist, but that's the thing. If you kill the Syndra, then I'm usually okay. But anyways, that's totally fine. Have a great rest of day. Hopefully this was an enjoyable game, and you can try out this HWEI variation if you want to try out this reroll. And if you don't like it, by all means, don't play it. Like I said, it's usually good if other people are playing rerolls. As you can see, there were 2 other rerollers in my lobby that I identified pretty early, so it was a really good idea to play around. And then I started the game out with a Mordekaiser, so learning to spell Mordekaiser just helps him to be like a giga tank towards the late game. So it all works out, and it's all good. And yeah, have a great rest of the day, and hopefully everything's good. Bye-bye.